I think everybody who regularly plays video games has at least one game that made them fall in love with the medium. For plenty of people, it's a whole damn list, and I'm no exception. When I think of games that made me love games, three in specific come to mind: Wii Sports, Injustice Gods Among Us, and the Azure Striker Gunvolt games. Now, I know you've played Wii Sports, and I'm willing to bet you've at least heard of Injustice. It's pretty good, go play it if you haven't. But I'm willing to bet you've never heard of or played Gunvolt. The exception being if you know me, because it's basically all I talk about. If you are part of the camp that's never heard of it, that's understandable. It's a Mega Man style game that released right around the time that Mighty Number 9 started picking up steam, and it released exclusively on the Nintendo 3DS, which is a great console in its own right, but it didn't give the game as much of an audience as it could have had. Luckily, ever since release, the franchise has hit a much wider audience. The first game was released on Steam shortly after the 3DS, and after the second game came out, a physical version of both games was released by Yacht Club Games, the guys who made Shovel Knight. That bundle has since come to Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4, as well as the most recent game in the franchise, Luminous Avenger X, hitting both of those platforms as well as Steam and the Xbox One. Multiple crossover games with the aforementioned Mighty Number 9 have been released, and the titular Gunvolt has made appearances in Runbow, Blaster Master Zero, Blade Strangers, and Indie Pogo. Recently, it was announced that the best game in the franchise, Azure Striker Gunvolt 2, would be coming to Steam on June 22nd. If you haven't gotten into the franchise yet, the best time to get into it is right now. In this video, I'll be talking about why you should get into Gunvolt, the best way to go about getting into Gunvolt, and a little surprise at the end. With that being said, let's begin. As previously stated, the first Azure Striker Gunvolt game released on Nintendo 3DS on August 20th, 2014. The game is an action platformer involving RPG elements inspired by Mega Man. I know that's not exactly a unique statement, but the difference between Gunvolt and games like 20XX is that Inti Creates, the developers of the Gunvolt series, have actually worked on the Mega Man series itself. They're an indie studio that made Mega Man 9 and 10, as well as the critically acclaimed Mega Man Zero series. They also happen to be some of the resident experts on how to make a game feel like an anime. Everything about Gunvolt just oozes 90s anime aesthetics, from the art style, to the plot, and even the music. The plot goes a little something like this. In a world where people with psychic powers are becoming more and more common, an electric company / centuries-old crime syndicate, the Sumeragi Group, takes it upon themselves to rein in these powerful individuals called adepts. They do this using a program called the Muse, which is an artificial J-pop artist that, when heard by adepts, causes their powers to run wild, making them easy to track and capture. In order to prevent this, an anti-Sumeragi group called Quill has made it their mission to destroy the Muse. However, when their field operative, Gunvolt himself, finds the Muse, it's actually a little girl named Jewel. Gunvolt discovers that the Muse is simply a manifestation of this little girl's psychic powers, also known as her Septima. Gunvolt decides that after Jewel offers up her life to stop Sumeragi from abusing her powers, he must leave Quill and bring Jewel in order to give her a life that she deserves. During the first game, you play as Gunvolt and defeat Sumeragi's main adept force, the Sumeragi 7, as well as dismantling their operations. In order to do this, Gunvolt uses his septimal power, known as Azure Striker, which gives him control over electricity. Because of this, while Gunvolt does use a gun, it's only to tag opponents so that he can zap them with electricity. Because of that, Gunvolt plays entirely differently from just about any other Mega Man-esque character. In addition, if Gunvolt dies in battle, there's a chance that Jewel will call upon the Muse's power to save him. But there's a catch. The only way to increase the chance of Jewel helping Gunvolt is to talk with her outside of missions. This means that, As a player, being a good friend and supporter to Jewel is basically a given if you want to increase your odds of survival. Another significant character that this game introduces is Copen, who later on takes an important playable role in Gunvolt 2 and Luminous Avenger X, but I don't want to spoil his role in this story. The game's world is interesting and immersive, and that is part of what makes it good, but it wouldn't really matter if the gameplay wasn't fun. Fortunately, Inti Creates knows how to make gameplay systems that are more in-depth and complex enough to justify the experience, even if you don't care about the story. In order to understand what makes Gunvolt's combat so good, you have to understand what makes Mega Man's combat so relatively mediocre. Don't get me wrong, the Mega Man games are fantastic in their own right, but when it comes to combat, there's honestly not a lot of depth. No matter what you're fighting, all you're doing is jumping and shooting. Fighting a basic enemy, jump and shoot it. Fighting a mid-ranged enemy, jump and shoot it. Fighting a boss fight, jump and shoot it. It's not necessarily bad, but it's not complicated. In Azure Striker Gunvolt, instead of just jumping and shooting, there's jumping, tagging, and attacking. Even in the later games when you're playing as Copen, who's meant to be a Mega Man style character, you jump, you tag, and you attack. In addition, Gunvolt has a scoring system called Kudos that means you earn extra points for pulling off specific maneuvers during combat. You earn these Kudos during regular gameplay, but let's say you take out 2 enemies at once with your attack. That earns you extra points. Let's say you do that in the air. That earns you more points. Let's say you take out 3 enemies at once in the air. That earns you even more points. This means that, unlike in the Mega Man games, where the most experimentation you get is finding out which bosses are weak to which weapons, you're constantly experimenting with how to maximize your Kudos output, because there's a reward if you get enough. If you manage to rack up 1,000 Kudos during a stage, Jewel summons the Muse for you, replacing whatever that stage's music is with a catchy J-pop song. However, there is consequence to playing risky. If you get a checkpoint, or you get hit, or you use a super move, you lose Kudos, which means that the J-pop stops. All of this creates a very intricate system that means that even if you're level 99 and you've unlocked every achievement and you've accomplished every challenge, you're still having fun experimenting no matter what level you're playing. In addition, because the storytelling is woven into the gameplay, you come to love these characters and care about what happens to them. It's very Persona-like in that regard. But now that I've talked your ear off about why you should play the game, how should you play the game? There's plenty of options, and it's something that's difficult to mess up, but it never hurts to talk about. Obviously, you want to start with Gunvolt 1, which is available on Nintendo 3DS, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Steam. Personally, if you have the choice, I would avoid the Steam port, as it was the first one made and therefore is a little bit rough. After that, a mini-game, Mighty Gunvolt, released, but it's not really necessary to play because, quite frankly, it's not very good. However, if you're dead set on playing it, it is available for Nintendo 3DS and Steam. It's a crossover game revolving around Gunvolt teaming up with Ekaro from the Galgun series and Beck from Mighty No. 9 to stop Sumeragi from reforming the Muse project. It's very clearly a rip on bad translations from the NES era of games, and it's only about 5 levels long unless you count the DLC, so again, don't worry about it if you don't want to play it. After that, there's Azure Striker Gunvolt 2, which is again available on Nintendo 3DS, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Steam. The PlayStation 4 port and presumably the Steam port are going to be good versions. However, I'd recommend getting one of the Nintendo ports because there's a secret boss fight that you can only access using a Shovel Knight amiibo. Many would argue that the 3DS port is the superior version because of spoilers involving the final boss, but in my opinion it doesn't really matter, and the Switch port comes with all of the DLC, so I would recommend the Switch port. After that, there's Mighty Gunvolt Burst, which is not so much a sequel to Mighty Gunvolt as an enhancement in literally every way possible. It's insanely good. The main story revolves around a crossover between Mighty No. 9 and Gunvolt, however Galgun does rejoin the fray in a DLC episode. There's a total of 9 playable characters counting DLC, so there's plenty of replay value, though it does lack the kudos system, so it's not as replayable. Again, this game is available on Nintendo 3DS, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Steam, although the PlayStation 4 port does go under the name Gunvolt Burst. It is the same game, though. Lastly, there's Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger X, which is the game I'm going to talk about the least, because it's the most recent, and it's the most plot-heavy, so just know that it's really good. It's available on all modern consoles, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Steam. As for all of the other games Gunvolt makes an appearance in, there's Runbow, where he's an unlockable costume for the main character, Blaster Master Zero, where he's an EX character, which is a DLC character with a different moveset from the main character. There's Blade Strangers, an anime fighting game where he makes an appearance as a trickier character to control. And lastly, there's Indie Pogo, which Gunvolt hasn't actually been released for yet, though I expect he'll arrive soon. In terms of other content, there have been several albums, multiple audio drama CDs, and an OVA adaptation of the very first level released on the 3DS eShop in 2017. So that's about all I have to say, and I just want to thank everybody for letting me gush about one of my favorite game series. Before you go, I have a couple of important things to mention though. First off, I want to thank @Chromakaze on Twitter for allowing me to use his gameplay footage. This all came from a multimedia marathon of Gunvolt content that he did, and I just wanted to say thank you. Second off, I want to apologize. I should mention I had a much bigger video planned for this week. However, I didn't feel satisfied with the script quality and I wanted more time to work on it, so that may come later down the pipeline or it may not, I don't know. Lastly, at the start of the video I did mention that I had a surprise planned. That is, I'm doing a giveaway. Since I want as many people to play Gunvolt as possible, I figured the best way to do that would be to give away a Steam copy of your choice of Gunvolt 1, Gunvolt 2, or Luminous Avenger X. All you have to do to enter is comment below which game you want, and tell me about a game that made you fall in love with games. I will decide at random who the winner is on June 22nd, the day that Gunvolt 2 releases on Steam. The winner will have their choice of any of these 3 games, and I will send them a digital copy as a gift through Steam. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you want more updates on my content, please consider following me on Twitter @Dante4Smash. I appreciate your patience, and I will see y'all when I see y'all.